So when I heard the news about the shooting at Michigan State, the very first thought I had was of Paris and Tracy Revois, who are always up there in our Zoom. Paris is working today, but Tracy's up there. Paris is on the board. Tracy's shepherd, even though they're up there in the Twin Cities. And they're Michiganders, and they both went to Michigan State for their undergrad, and they both went to Michigan State for vet school. And I don't know two people who are bigger Spartans. Like every time I see Paris, it doesn't matter if it's cold, it's hot, he's got some Michigan State gear on. And he's like, his toenails are painted green and white, which is like for a 60-something-year-old guy, I don't know that it's really a good look, but it is all Paris, okay? It is all Paris. He's got, he always wears sandals so you can see his green and white toes. And when I saw the stories, I thought, here's this beautiful place, this place of such possibility and hope and pride that has now joined the list, right? Virginia Tech, Uvalde, Parkland, that has become this place that has really been broken open by this situation of violence. And then, the next day or so, as they showed the students, honestly, I just glanced and looked at I just couldn't even read it, 19 and 20. I could hear Bruce Springsteen singing, honestly, 1 minute you're here, next minute you're gone. And you could imagine their parents, one of them had just been home that weekend talking about how she just loved Michigan State so much. Seeing a parent standing there at the child's bedroom door, baby, I'm so all alone, right? 1 minute you're here, next minute you're gone. And the boss could sing that in Syria alone 500,000 times the last decade of civil war. Estimates are close to 600,000 people have been killed in that conflict. In a country with 24 million people, 1 in 2 have been displaced. 12 million, right? Because they have the bad fortune to have this horrible President Assad who bombs his own people and uses chemical weapons on them. And then the earthquake, it's bad enough in Turkey, but they have a functioning government, and they have aid that's come in, and they have building codes, and they have resources. And in Syria, literally for the first week, absolutely no aid. I don't know if you saw the reports of some of the survivors, some of those who were rescuers. There was one man who said, our children, we can hear them crying out from the rubble to save them. And what do we say? The international community says, because of politics, we can't help you. And he said, in his English, is this reasonable? Is this a world we can live with? So today, you can't be surprised that the disciples are worn down with death. They lived in a world not much different than ours. They lived in a world steeped in death. 19 centuries before modern medicine, there are no antibiotics to stop an infection. That life expectancy, if you made it out of childhood, was maybe 30 to 35. We think of Jesus at 32 as an early death, but no. And then there was the crush of the Roman Empire. And so when this Jesus showed up, this Messiah of their longing, right? This miracle worker, this healer, this teacher, they were all over it. They were so ready for the day they longed for the day when the lion and the lamb would lay down together, and when there would be no hurting or destroying on God's holy mountain, when there would be this reign of peace. And so, don't you know, they were not too happy to hear Jesus show up and talk about his own passion, to talk about how he must suffer and die, to talk about how they must suffer and die, that they're going to have to take up their cross and follow, and that if they wanted to save their life, they would have to lose it. Who wants that, really? Is that what anybody's here signing on for? So when they had this moment of transfiguration, when Jesus goes up on this mountain and he starts shining and his face starts glowing, they are all over that. It is Moses come again. It is Moses on Mount Sinai. It's this magical moment when they are in the palm of God's hand and God is delivering the 10 Commandments. The word for Greek there is metamorphosis. It's like Jesus is like this butterfly coming out of the cocoon. And it's this moment of incredible radiance. And Peter is like, this is really good. We like this. Hey, we're going to build 3 booths right now, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah. And we're just going to stay right here. And then there's that voice, this is my beloved, and you I'm well pleased. And then Jesus is like, yeah, no, because that's not what I'm here for. And so then he goes right back down the mountain, and then guess what? There's another prediction of his passion and his death. There's another reminder that if you want to save your life, you've got to lose it. And that's not all there is, though. It's not just death, transfiguration, death. There's also this healing story in there that sometimes we miss. And it's kind of an unusual healing story. It's not your average healing story. It's the average healing story in that the father is desperate for a cure. He comes to Jesus and he says, my son is an epileptic. And he falls into the fire and he falls into the water and he foams at the mouth. You can hear the pathos. You can hear the father saying, buried under the rubble or hidden under his desk, and now he won't speak. And Jesus heals this young man. That's what we'd expect. But then the part of the story that's unusual is that the disciples were the first stop. They were the physician's assistant. And the man had gone there first, and they had been powerless to heal him. And so the disciples say to Jesus, why couldn't we do it? And Jesus says, really? Were you up on the mountaintop with me? Are you the one on the big stage? Are you on the platform? No, that's actually not what Jesus says. Jesus doesn't say, you need to be Bruce Springsteen. You need to be the halftime show at the Super Bowl. You need to be Barack Obama. Jesus says, this just takes a little bit, a tiny bit of faith, like a mustard seed. Like that's really what this is about. Like just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of faith. Just a little tiny bit of faith, and then you can move a whole mountain. Jesus just says, like, what this really is about is just the beloved child of God that's in every single one of you kind of faith, that you just need to kind of pull out what's inside of you, that like when somebody sends an email and says, could you have my son live with me, live with you, to say yes. I mean, it's that little bitty, tiny type of faith, right? That's what it is. I think of Audre Lorde. She's one of my heroes. She's sadly died of cancer too young, but she was a feminist and a womanist and was just this incredible writer. And in 1978, she wrote this essay about the uses of the erotic. And she contrasted the erotic with pornography. She said pornography is feeling without connection. It's keeping the other person at a distance. It's keeping yourself at a distance. It's the lack of connection. But the erotic is this incredible power where we join our physical self to the emotion. It's been in the arms of a lover, but it's also taking an incredible walk with a friend, right? Or it's sitting down for coffee with a new friend and that connection. Or it's pushing your kid in a swing, right? Or it's everybody coming together for Medicaid expansion. It's the Uptown in 2008 when Obama was elected. And that place, that's what it is, right? It's 17,000 people in the arena while Springsteen's up there, every person pulling out the very best of themselves. And Lorde uses this beautiful image that to me is this mustard seed faith. She talks about like a little tiny pellet. She was a little bitty girl during the Second World War, the time of rations, and the margarine would come in this white, colorless block. But inside there was a tiny little yellow pelt. And they would leave that margarine out and let it soften, and then they would pinch it and break it, and they would knead that margarine, and the yellowness would spread throughout there, just delicious yellowness, just kind of filling all of it. She says that's the power inside of us, right? It's broken open at times, and then we need one another to kind of need us, to bring us together, to make us a community, to help that power that's deep in us, that beloved child of God power, that mustard seed power in every one of us, to be filled and to fill and to reach out. I think about the white helmets. You remember the white helmets? They were kind of in the news a lot 6, 7, 8 years ago. They were kind of the first responders in Syria, Syrian Defense Force. They came together to just kind of create this response to the whole war. They were bakers and blacksmiths and teachers. They weren't trained in any way of doing this. They didn't have equipment, but they came together, and there was a documentary. I remember Mary Zimmerman coming up to me after church saying, you have got to see this. It's an incredible documentary. And that year, like 2017, there were 5 films nominated for the documentary Oscar. I think 3 of them were about Syria. and this one won about the White House. I can still remember sitting in the movie theater, and when the show was over, the woman behind us crying uncontrollably, and Joe not able to move, and just saying, you know, what is my life? And the film talked about these people from just every walk of life, small, humble, you know, average guys, and they had come together, and together they had saved countless lives. I mean, the number's like 100,000, and 250 of them have given their life. If you want to save your life, you must lose it. But that's not who most of us are, right? But they've been back in the news now with the earthquake, moving mountains with their hands. And I look at that and I think, that's not me. I mean, I always say I'm a runner, I have no upper body strength. And then I saw one of the white helmets this week, they didn't always have 24 years old. She was standing there, slight of stature with the hijab. She was holding a child in her arms that she had dug out of the earth, dug out of the rubble with her own bare hands. How we sell ourselves short, right? What power is in every single one of us to pull out, to create, to bring life. And I think about Michigan State. Paris sent me the vigil after that Wednesday night that was there in the bitter cold and the wind. And the president of the university had spoken, and Governor Whitmer, her degrees, her undergrad, her law degree were from there. She talked about everything you'd expect, Spartan tough and Spartan strong. She talked about her own kids. She talked about the kid at Michigan State who had been at Sandy Hook and was now there at Michigan State too. And then Coach Izzo, if you follow college basketball at all, you could probably pull his face up because he's been there 40 years, going on 30 years as the head coach. And he came to the podium and he stood there. And many of the things he said you'd expect. He talked about what that university meant to him. He said, I don't live this place and I don't love this place. He said, I don't love, I live this place. It is my life. I have given every single thing to it, and I will give more to it in the years to come. And he talked about the students who had died, how they had gone to be with their parents, how he said words are so hollow. He talked about the students fighting for their life. They talked about the doctors and the nurses. So many had rushed to the hospital, they had to turn them away. He talked about how good people were, how the students, how when they told them, stay in place, shelter, and how they were frightened and afraid that they did it. And then he talked about a challenge. He talked about what we all need to do. And he said, we have all got to be vulnerable and share our feelings. He said, everybody knows I cry. I cry in front of my team. I cry on national TV. Every single person processes trauma differently. But if you are hurting, let us know. Look around this group. Look around these people. Share yourself. We need one another. And then he said, we all have a platform. Some of us have a small platform, and some of us have a high platform, but we all have a platform. Gun violence is insane in this country, he said. We all have to use our platform to speak out. He was talking, folks, about that mustard seed faith, that pellet of power right in here that has to come out. And then he closed by saying, look around. Look at the people around you. Before you leave, introduce yourself to the people around you. He said, I hate how COVID has made us so separate. It makes me crazy, he said. We need one another. Introduce yourself to one another. Greet one another. He said the world needs it, and Michigan State needs it, and the grieving need it, and I need it too. We come to this world, and I think of the other line from Springsteen, the other line of Scripture, in which he said, I wanted you to heal me, and you set me on fire. I wanted you to heal me, and you set me on fire. We have a longing for healing. We have a longing for peace and joy and relief from this madness. We have a longing for wholeness and reprieve and tenderness. And thank God, we have each been set on fire to pull out what we have to help bring a little more joy and justice to this world. This is the gospel. May it be so. Amen.